With our previous project, so Cool Mat, we initially started off on week 1 with some menu items. We added those as posts that we looped over, and that was all we did. Then on week 2, we got a bit more advanced. We added different types of content, so we organized things into custom post types and categories. And what we did was to use the query posts feature to adjust what we were seeing on the page inside of our loops. Now, one problem, if you can remember well, was that when we created a loop, firstly, just to show us one random post at the top here, it affected what we saw further down. Now, the reason for that is when we use query posts, it's interfering with what's called the main loop. So on the page, we have this main loop that is accessible there. And when we use query posts, it interferes and changes it. So every time we sort of went down the page, we changed that query posts to be a new query, and it read things from top to bottom and essentially showed us what we see. Now, I'm afraid to tell you that the query posts method is not really the best way to do it by the book, and the reason we used it was more for simplicity. And this week we're going to kind of unlearn that and see the proper way to do things. So with query posts, we have query posts. We would put in some options and then we would just start our loop like we're used to normally. But what we're going to introduce now is what's called WP query. Now, just for laughs, we can use the WordPress diagram here that shows off which one to use and where it's good for. So it says for the main loop only, query posts, and it's kind of implying this is not the best way to do it. Reason for that is it affects the main loop. So we have to reset it every time and be mindful that it is adjusting what we see. So if you remember, you cast your mind back when we created just one random post at the top here, it would affect what we saw down the bottom. So what we're going to look at instead is something called WP query, and it looks a bit like this. So the way that it works is we put a query inside a variable. So a variable is like a container, stores information, and it keeps it separate from that main loop. So we create a new separate loop every time. So just like we see here, a new secondary loop, and then we loop over that as we're used to. Now the difference here is we use it as a query variable. We could call this anything we want, but the idea is that we still loop over it and we can do our regular stuff. So the reason we introduced this code, we didn't introduce this code last week because it's a little bit advanced to kind of explain on week 2. So rather than throwing that on you early, we just use the more simple query posts. But moving forwards, this is the way we're going to do things instead. So if we grab this code, I'm going to create a new file, and this is going to be called content explore.php, and I'm going to paste that in. So you can grab this from the guides. I'm on my local host at the moment, but this will be on guides.superhigh.com, and you'll be able to find the same thing there. So I'm just going to do a bit of indentation to tidy things up just a touch. Actually, they're fine as they are. So the idea here is we firstly have an array, which is a set of options that we put into our query. So this is the same as saying this, essentially. It's just a little bit neater to separate them out. So we create a new WordPress query with these sets of options. And then we look to see if we have some posts in that query. We loop over them using this while. And then we do our regular loop like we're used to. So we kind of go through all of our posts and it does its thing. So in this case, we're getting 3 posts and we're putting them in a random order. So let's save that. And in our content.php, let's just put this in at the bottom. We're going to include this file. So we'll say php get template underscore part. And let's put our closing bits in. So we're going to get it from template parts and then content hyphen explore. So just add a comment here. Here we include our explore component. Now, eventually, what this is going to end up looking like is going to be this Let's Explore Together with a few different options of other posts that we can link to. But we're going to start off with just a simple loop where we grab 3 posts and they're random each time. So going into our page now, where are we? Hong Kong. Going to close the developer tools, refresh the page. And look what we have. So what's happening now is it's getting the template. So it's going through, it's creating a query, it's looping through. So it's getting us 3 posts, random order. And in the loop, it's just putting out a H1 tag with the title of the post. So nothing too new there. What's different is the way that we set up this query. So if you're interested to learn a bit more about WP Query, there's very extensive writing on the documentation website. To be honest, it could scare you at first, so you kind of got to cherry pick bits and pieces from it, but the idea is pretty much what I've just explained. So what we've got going on our page is a list of our posts, but the trouble is that we're currently looking at Hong Kong and we're getting Hong Kong here as well. So what we'll do in our next video is a combination of styling this thing up. So currently these don't link anywhere. We'll make that happen, and we'll also make it so it doesn't show us a duplicate of the current place we're looking at.